This video was made possible through the support of my patrons.
Be strong. The light is very good.
We fly like you.
No.
For this review marathon, I don't think there's a story that comes with as much baggage as the Webb Planet. And that may sound odd to the uninitiated. Like, Mr. TARDIS, isn't this just that silly bug story? And yeah, that's partly true, but for the production team in 1965, this was the big one. The story that would introduce villains that could finally rival the massive success of the Daleks, in an epic six-parter written by Australian writer Bill Strutton. The creative team bet the insect farm on this one, giving the story a big marketing budget by having the brand new villains, the Zarbi, making public appearances on the streets of London, and a special trailer being shown on the BBC the week before broadcast showcasing the Zarbi at BBC Television Centre. This wasn't Doctor Who's first ever trailer, but it was the show's first trailer to utilise footage specifically for promotion, though unfortunately it has been lost. And the results of this campaign is the most viewed story of the black and white era of Doctor Who, with a peak viewership of 13.5 million people. However, by the end of part 6, millions had tuned out and the audience appreciation index stood at 42 out of 100, one of the lowest in Doctor Who's history. But is it that bad? Were the resources mismanaged? Well, before we can find out, let me back up. So the force that was influencing the TARDIS at the end of the last serial takes the time travellers to the planet Vortis, a planet dominated by oversized insect life. The Doctor and Ian go outside to investigate and quickly find themselves, along with Vicky, being coerced by an entity known as the Animus, which has controlled and made violent the normally docile native ant species, the Zarbi. Other natives of the planet are the Menoptera, massive butterflies, who capture Barbara, with their plan being to try and defeat the Animus and take back control of Vortis, which is becoming part of the Animus's insidious web. Now, this is a really tough serial to review because honestly, in terms of the actual story itself, there's not a lot here. It's a six-parter, but the length mainly comes from the divide and conquer nature of the script. The story starts with the Doctor and Ian exploring as Barbara and Vicky stay inside the TARDIS, and the men discover acid pools which they test by dropping Ian's tie into the liquid. And why does Ian have a tie wrapped around his waist instead of a belt? Was that the style at the time?
Let's have your tie.
Well, I haven't got one.
I know you're not wearing one, dear boy, but the one round your middle.
Let my pants stay up.
Yes, well, that's your affair, not mine.
Here you are.
Thank you.
Oh, just a minute.
Anyway, one of the Animus's abilities is to control anything in contact with gold, so it's able to manipulate Barbara into leaving the ship, where she is then captured/rescued by the Menoptera. Vicky follows but reunites with the Doctor and Ian. Ian gets separated from them while trying to find help, and honestly, it's just a lot of running around, and because we've got these disparate factions, nothing really has a chance to settle and establish itself effectively. So you've got the Menoptera, this butterfly race that was forced to flee Vortis and seek refuge on a nearby moon when the Animus arrived, but there's still a few left on the planet who are forced into servitude. The Menoptera send their forces back to Vortis to reclaim the planet, but they die almost immediately, and the Doctor and friends have to help them get the planet back. Meanwhile, the Zarbi are just running around making strange noises, while the Animus talks to the Doctor by means of plastic tube to try and ascertain the location of the remaining Menoptera.
What the hell is this? Some kind of tube?
There's really not a lot happening, and I'll be honest folks, by part 4, I was bored senseless despite all of the strange out there imagery and the committed performances by the Menoptera actors. The problem is twofold. The first issue, It's just a boring remake of Terry Nation's The Daleks from last season. The Doctor and friends have to save an alien race that's associated with peace and beauty from a much more alien threat representing aggression. The Daleks try to use the Doctor and his companions to lure the Thals into a trap, and here the Animus uses the Doctor and his companions to learn about the Menoptera's location. The Doctor and his friends escaped the Daleks and concocted a plan with the Thals to return to the enemy base in a stealth mission, and the same happens here on Vortis with a stealth mission to the heart of the Animus's web. The second issue is that while the Daleks was carried by compelling villains and the Thals had a concrete ideology that was apparent to everyone watching, combined with the political overtones of anti-fascism, for the web planet, the Zarbi and the Animus aren't interesting. They're not idiosyncratic villains, and the Menoptera are just a striking visual design and nothing more. Script editor Dennis Spooner latched onto Bill Strutton's script, thinking it could be an allegory for free market economics versus communism with the Menoptera and the Zarbi respectively, but honestly, that just doesn't pan out in the text or on screen. Not to mention, the metaphor gets confused by the Animus taking control of the Zarbi, so who knows what that's meant to be an allegory for, but I promise not to get too bogged down in an interpretation that appears to have never made it past the conception stage, and for all intents and purposes was just Dennis Spooner's headcanon. Honestly, the Menoptera as a species are so poorly defined that I was almost expecting the serial to pull a last-minute twist where they were going to be revealed as double-crossing villains. But nope, it's just a basic good aliens versus basic bad aliens, but with no effective allegory or characterization underlying it. It feels like the web planet is trying so hard to copy the Daleks that they even brought in one of that serial's directors, Richard Martin. The story even borrows more from Terry Nation, specifically the Keys of Marinus' acid pools. In fact, so little was happening in the web planet, and Maureen O'Brien was getting so frustrated at Vicky having nothing to contribute in the script, that Richard Martin and Dennis Spooner added the Grub people with 24 hours notice before filming part 5, just to spice things up a bit more. These are the Optera, a species descended from the Menoptera who live underground and have lost their wings as a result. An interesting idea, but at this point it's just another insect to add to the pile of insects at this point. The dialogue isn't particularly memorable, there's no decent emotional beats to be found in the story, and at 6 parts it just slogs along trying to justify its existence. I know it sounds like I'm being mean here, but there's really just nothing interesting in the script to be found here, to the extent where characters will just make mistakes for no reason. You see, the Doctor and Vicky are given a device called the Isoptope from the Menoptera in order to destroy the Animus. However, for basically no reason, Vicky hides it when they arrive in the Zarbi stronghold, just so they can't immediately use it when they encounter the Animus itself later on in the episode, lengthening the serial for another 10 minutes. Sure, it means that Barbara can find it and use it instead, but she's just been hanging around with the Menoptera this whole time. It's not built to this conclusion. And Jacqueline Hill took a holiday for part 3, though I wouldn't blame you if you didn't notice. Oh, and also at one point, she uses a stick to smack a Menoptera away when she's initially kidnapped. So why does the web planet have any sort of reputation or staying power within the fandom? Honestly, it's entirely to do with the production team's efforts to actualize a totally alien environment and a supporting cast without a single human character outside of the TARDIS team. Designer John Wood was tasked with creating the alien landscapes and the web-like mazes of the Animus, and you know what, for a BBC 1960s budget, it looks pretty darn good, and Daphne Dare went above and beyond with the costume work, especially for the Menoptera, who are able to use and expand and manipulate their wings, and at some points even fly. And for no reason at all, here's a clip of a Menoptera running past a Zarbi and shouting Zarbi at it.
Zarbi?
The leader of the Menoptera is played by Rosalind De Winter, who was also tasked with helping to choreograph the insect movements for the rest of the actors, and she's done great work here. The way they move their arms to enunciate the dialogue gives the Menoptera an ethereal presence. They just don't have any actual characterization, though they do have names, but I genuinely can't remember any of them. The best opportunity for character development happens in part 3, where the leader explains to Ian the history of the conflict between the Menoptera and the Animus, and I'm sure it's meant to be interesting and fascinating and all that good stuff, but her face has been smudged for the duration of the monologue, and it's all I can focus on.
The Zarbi are not an intelligent species, but they were essential to the life pattern here. We lived at peace with them until they were made militant by the Dark Power.
The Dark Power? What's that?
The Animus.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because in order to give the titular web planet a more alien and ethereal look, the screen is blurred and smudged, which, yeah, in a few cases causes some interesting smears and distorted shades of black and white and grey, but for the most part it just looks like the cameras aren't working properly. It looks like the production team just smeared Vaseline on the camera lens.
There was a way in which he wanted the backgrounds looking weird or slightly soft, and so we had a glass put in front of the camera lens with smeared Vaseline over it.
Well, okay then. They literally did just do that. I will say though, as a result of this smearing, it means that the Web Planet is a story that is essentially impossible to colorize. This stylistic approach can only work in black and white. And like I said, there are a couple of shots where it does look pretty cool. As for the Zarbi, purported to be the next big thing with merchandising potential to rival the Daleks, yeah, they're pretty cute sometimes, as these poor actors wearing black stockings and these cumbersome costumes just run around the set, but there's not really a lot going on here. They're giant ants. Though to be fair, I do love the scene where a lone Zarbi is ordered to investigate the TARDIS and it pokes its head through the doorway, and it then gets so confused about the dimensions that it just immediately freaks out and leaves. Oh, and there's this infamous moment in part 3 where a Zarbi just full-on crashes into one of the cameras like it's a Tesla that's detected a child in the road. Young Zarbi are also present in this serial, called Venom Grubs, which look like giant woodlouse creatures with cannons for noses, and that's not a joke, those noses literally fire lasers. The Animus is an interesting presence. Like everything else, there's no real character, but Catherine Fleming gives it a really sinister voice, and when the group confront it at the end, it does feel like a genuinely powerful, evil entity that needs to be stopped here and now before it can spread. Expanded media would later develop the Animus as a pre-universe old god, which feels appropriate.
What I take from you will enable me to reach beyond this galaxy into the solar system, to pluck from Earth its myriad techniques, and take from man his mastery of space.
The Web Planet as a serial was allegedly a nightmare to film, with technical problems aplenty, a production going over budget, and episode recordings frequently going overtime in the studio, which I'm sure put many of the heads of department of the Web Planet on many BBC executives' hit lists. However, a lot of visually effective moments did wind up on screen, which I commend the production team for. The cliffhanger ending to Part 5 sees the Doctor and Vicky attacked by a web gun and frozen in place as they embrace each other. That's a really powerful image. I'm surprised this image does not pop up more often in fan art or on DVD covers or anything like that. It's really quite profound. Speaking of cliffhanger endings, I do love Part 1's ending, where the TARDIS is taken by the Zarbi and the Doctor returns to where he landed, having no idea where his ship has gone, with the episode ending with Richard Martin giving us a wonderful camera zoom.
My ship. My TARDIS.
Oh, and because it worked so well the first time, Part 2's cliffhanger also has a Hartnell zoom.
Why do you come now?
But apart from the Doctor going outside in Part 1 wearing an atmospheric density jacket and a cute little hat, I don't really have much more to say about the Web Planet. It's a production triumph, sometimes. But narratively, it's 3 episodes too long, with a lot of meandering. Thematically, there's nothing here, and I've seen brick walls with more characterization. I can see why the audience appreciation index was so low for the last 2 episodes, because while you can see the production struggling to keep up with the high concept ideas, there's nothing to actually gravitate towards character-wise or thematically to sink your teeth into. Obviously, I'm not expecting Goodfellas with insects or anything, but Doctor Who hasn't had to rely on just high concept ideas to coast along. We've had moral dilemmas, interesting characters, or at the very least, really charming dialogue. The Web Planet, for me at least, lacks all of that, and was possibly the most laborious watch of this marathon so far, once you look past the stellar work of the designers. But it was still a rough time for all involved making this story, with this also being the serial which convinced William Russell that it was time for him to move on after this season. Despite the high expectations of the Zarbi and the Web Planet in general, the adorable ants never made an on-screen return again, though the Zarbi were at the centre of the very first Doctor Who annual published in September 1965, with a story called The Lair of Zarbi Supremo being the show's first ever short story. An audio version read by William Russell was included on the Web Planet DVD release in 2005. And like I mentioned earlier, the Animus has made numerous appearances in expanded media. It's also one of Peter Capaldi's favourite Doctor Who stories, so you know what do I know, just listen to him.
The incredible ambition to try and render an insect world on basically what looked like a budget of £15 a week is immensely successful.
Anyway, join us next time, as former story editor David Whittaker gives us his last script of the Hartnell era, another historical no less, as the TARDIS lands in 12th century Palestine, slap bang in the middle of the Holy War, in The Crusade. I'll see you next time. Hey folks, thank you so much for watching this review of The Web Planet. If you watched last week's review, you'll probably recognise the fact that I'm still very flu-ridden, so thank you for your patience. Firstly, if you enjoyed this review, be sure to hit that like button, it really helps me out. Leave a comment down below to appease that almighty algorithm, and you can subscribe to keep up to date on more Mr. TARDIS videos in the future. But also, special shout out to my patrons who help to keep the lights on here at the Mr. TARDIS YouTube channel. You can see their names scrolling on the left of the screen right now, and I'd like to give a shout out to these particular patrons: Adam Grattan, Ben Langdon, Callum Baird, Cheaper City Blues, Dan the Dreamer Shill, Daniel Davis, Darkstar2189, Darren Carver-Bausiger, Dean Jones, Dr. Hadley, Dragonbugs, Dylan Whittaker, Finley Rude, Flipseed, Ginger Animator, Jack D. Evans, James Ivory, Joseph Adams, Lard Dragon Ezra, Leela, Maria Bergman, Mario Fanboy 15, Matthew Perry, Michael Serrano, Miranda Logan, Nate Harris, Palex, Pat Andrews, Randall Sprinkle, Raven Woods, Reese Lloyd, Ross, Ryan Duncan, Samuel Whittaker, Scott Gerard, The Brit Sniper, The Doctor 14 Blu-ray Reviews, Timbo 1834, Toby Loxton, Will, and William Baker. Thanks so much for watching this video, massively appreciate the support, and I'll see you folks next time.